Okay, who's ready to start? Welcome, everyone. My name is... Can you hear me? How's it sound? Okay. I'm Jeff Mackler. I'm on the National Steering Committee of Assange Defense. I'm the director of the mobilization to free Mumia Abu-Jamal. I'm on the National Steering Committee of the United National Anti-War Coalition. And frankly, at 84, I'm an old man. Are there any other older men here? I'm glad there's just one of us.
What about women? Women.
Women never get old.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well said, Jeffrey.
I want to start out with apologies to Francisco Herrera. We left him off accidentally the program, which you'll find on the back of the flyer today. But he's with us, and he is a renowned folk singer, artist, and will be performing with his group later on in the program. I want to thank the Social Justice Committee of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Unitarian Universalists for allowing us their hall, for giving it to us for a pittance. I want to say we're here, as we advertised, to celebrate the freedom of Julian Assange. But we're also here to say that the struggle continues. Free Mumia Abu-Jamal, free Leonard Peltier, free the Uhuru Three and Omali Yeshiteli. And then we had a strange thing. We said free them all. What the heck does free them all mean? Well, I'll tell you my definition, and you can use your own. The United States has the largest number of people in prison, on death row, and percentage of its population in jail than any nation on earth, into the several millions of people. I say free them all. In this society that promotes racism, backwardness, poverty, and starvation, it is inevitable that some people break the rules and ended up in the capitalist system. But as any good revolutionary, I remember certain facts. The French had a revolution in 1789 and they emptied the Bastille. They freed all the prisoners of the French feudal reactionary society. And many of them became future revolutionaries or were revolutionaries. The Russians overthrew the Tsar and emptied the prisons. I'm for a society where we free the prisoners, guarantee them jobs and housing and a quality of life and health care, and a free world where they don't have to steal. The society that I want to build won't have guards on supermarkets or security guards anywhere, because the food that we have will be for everyone, and no one will go for lack of food and starvation. Julian Assange was not only a champion of free speech, he was a man who told the truth about the U.S. wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, releasing tens of thousands of pages of exposés in the same manner that Dan Ellsworth released the Pentagon Papers in 1971 and charged under the same Espionage Act of 1917 that Ellsberg was. But we had a massive Vietnam War movement that protested the U.S. genocide of 4 million Vietnamese. And Dan Ellsberg was free not because the government spied on his psychologist or not because he had a good legal defense, but because he had a mass movement that made his future incarceration impossible. And Dan passed away a couple of years ago, but he is one of the 3 co-chairs of Assange Defense nationally, along with Noam Chomsky and our wonderful guest tonight, Alice Walker. They were fighters against the Vietnam War and fighters against the wars today. Today we have representatives speaking out against the genocide in Gaza and the West Bank, condemned for the first time in 45 years by the United Nations. Some people say, after we mobilized millions to get all the troops home, that Vietnam was a mistake. The debaters, including Democrats and Republicans, say the Afghan war was a mistake. 20-year mistake where 475,000 Afghans were slaughtered, some 27,000 Americans were wounded, but it was a mistake, so we chalk it off. Vietnam was not a mistake. It was the colonial policy of U.S. imperialism. Dan Ellsberg exposed the Pentagon Papers and the lies about Vietnam in the same way that Julian Assange told the truth about the modern world today. As I said, we're proud that Dan and Alice and Noam Chomsky are co-chairs of the committee to free Julian Assange, and he is now free because of your efforts and theirs. We say tonight, free Leonard, free Mumia, free the Uhuru through, and Kevin Cooper.
Yes.
Now, Kevin Cooper is going to be speaking to us tonight, and all the representatives of the others that I mentioned will be sending their greetings or speaking. But Kevin is calling from death row. He was accused falsely and framed up on murdering 4 people in Chino, and he wasn't there. And he's presented the evidence to a newly formed California Truth Commission proving his innocence, and he's struggling under new legislation to be released from prison. I say when we release Kevin and Mumia and the Uhuru 3, we'll have the biggest celebration you can ever imagine. So with those opening remarks, I'm going to begin the program with a few points. All of our, quote, major speakers are going to speak for 5 minutes. Here we have Margaret Kimberly, the editor of Black Alliance for Peace and Black Agenda Report, flew through 3,000 miles from New York City to be with us tonight to speak for 5 minutes. Forgive me, I told Margaret in my prerogative of chair that she could have 6. But if you listen to Margaret and her tapes and her organization, and Black Alliance, Black Agenda Report was founded by the late Glenn Ford, who we've had here many times. She is the proud heir to that. So with that, I'd like to give you tonight Phoebe Thomas Sorgan, the chair of the Social Justice Committee of the Berkeley Fellowship of Unitarian Universalists, a long-term, if not lifetime, political activist. Welcome, Phoebe.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you all for being here. It is such an honor to have you here on this occasion. If these walls could talk, there has been so much magic that happened right here. The Green Party of the USA was founded here on our property. Lawrence Ferlinghetti has spoken here, Joanna Macy, various Black Panthers, Medea Benjamin, Rachel Corey's parents, Julia Butterfly, Ralph Nader, Country Joe McDonald, and he founded an open mic, which is still going here on the third Friday of every month. And the tradition there, everything's welcome, magic, comedy, but the tradition is protest music. And so also Dan Ellsberg has spoken here many, many times to full houses, always inspiring us, always bringing us to tears. And it was his dying wish that Julian Assange would be freed. So it's just so wonderful to celebrate that together here. And I don't want to take more of your time because I want to give Margaret Kimberly or Alice Walker my extra time. But you can go to bfuu.org to see events that we have here. And this is the place to be on Friday nights when we don't have the monthly open mic. We also have dances, lots of fun. And there's a dance coming up, a swing dance, that is a benefit for the children of Gaza. That's September 28th. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank Paul Norden, who's our technical director from the Berkeley Fellowship, who's making all this equipment work, especially for us old people that have no idea what it is. Is Jody Evans with us tonight? Jody Evans, the founder of CodePink?
Yes.
Where is she?
I saw her walk in. I saw her walk in.
Here we go. Welcome, Jody Evans, the co-founder of CodePink, and another one of those lifelong political social activists. Welcome.
Thank you. Howdy. First of all, just wonderful to see all of you beautiful people. I don't get to the Bay that often, and just like the peace activists of the Bay Area are just the heart and soul and nourishment for so many across the country. Because you've been fierce, you never stop. I mean, sometimes it's like every day I see you in the streets. So thanks for all the inspiration, for your heart and for your passion. And that's really what we're here celebrating, is we the people. Because it was we the people that were able to create the conditions for the liberation of Julian Assange. And you know, it's like, it really was love. And so many of us know as we supported, you know, family members coming through, as we supported each other, as we gave each other strength, as we continued. Like, think of how long we've been in the streets. Think of how long we were organizing, but we never gave up because we knew it was right. And we know not only were we standing for the liberation of Julian, but we're standing for truth. And what it is that when we speak truth, the value of that, the importance of that, and that we can never, ever, ever let go of that. And yet to be coming from the love that was this community, which was, you know, Stella and John and Gabrielle and the boys to us, that just kept, you know, constantly coming forward, being there, so that they were so afraid of us that, you know, setting the conditions so that if Julian came back during the election, that was just not going to be okay because we were going to cause a ruckus they just couldn't afford. They were already suffering. And so, you know, let this be the moment that we reconnect ourselves and recommit ourselves to truth, that we are the carriers of truth, that we continue to raise up what is true, what is real, in a time where there is so much distortion, so much manipulation of so many people, and that we also have an open heart for everyone, that they don't mean to be as blind, that it's on purpose, that they are distorted, and that we continuing to stand for peace, to stand for love, to stand for that we are all one, and that everyone deserves dignity and peace and respect, then we could keep pulling away and the power from underneath them by bringing it to all of us and keep taking it away and taking it away. so that it can collapse on itself, and that we can build a future together that is committed to peace and committed to what the values that we all work for every day. It is us. And we just proved that. And it was proved again, and celebration, having these celebrations is necessary because I know we're in the street and I know it's hard and it's so much and constantly, last week, our minds just get blown, our minds and our hearts get ripped apart by what is possible for someone to think of and do to another human being. But it's our love that keeps us together and keeps us sane and doesn't let us get lost in that madness. So deepest gratitude for all you do, and that we remember to celebrate when there are these victories. And just another victory that I would say is that the pro-Palestine movement is a movement of love. And that we did a really powerful thing. We got the sitting president of the United States to not be able to run for office. Yes. So that's huge. So keep pulling ourselves away from power and exposing the violence that it is, because onward to victory.
Happy birthday, Jody. Save a piece of that cake for me. And by the way, I was talking to a fellow as I was walking down the street. His name was Benjamin Cohn. Have you ever heard of him? Well, he is literally serving ice cream for everybody at the end of the meeting. Free. And Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Except I used my influence to say that it should be Cherry Garcia. How about a hand for Cherry Garcia? And thank you for Ben and Jerry's. The ice cream will be here. It was picked up today in Jack London Square in a giant tub by the National Organizing Director of Assange Defense, Vince DeStefano. Thank you, Vince. Our next speaker is Opium Sabah. He is going to bring greetings for a comrade who has just turned 80 years old and who has been in prison for some 50 years on frame-up charges, and he is an innocent man, and we want to bring him. He is Leonard Peltier. Welcome, Omar Sabah.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Opium Sabah. I'm from the Leonard Peltier Official Ad Hoc Committee. I'm also part of the Oakland Jericho chapter. I'm a San Francisco-based activist and hip-hop artist. I actually have a statement from Leonard for this event and for Julian and all of you. I congratulate my brother Assange on fighting his way to freedom. In 1979, I released a statement urging people to unite and demand justice. Political prisoners in the U.S. suffer as much or more than any folks in countries that the president at the time, Jimmy Carter, denounced for human rights violations. Human rights abuses in the United States continue to erode any resemblance of decency, spirit, or integrity in this nation. It is time for all of us to come together in solidarity and demand justice and basic human dignity. For those who don't know, Leonard Peltier is the longest held indigenous prisoner in the history of America. He just had his 80th birthday. He was also just denied parole. So we have all been fighting and supporting all these years, but the time is really now to put up the good fight and to support. And if the things his lawyers has in place are not accepted or moved forth, we will be moving forward with essentially bringing the court to court. Leonard has a long list of medical issues. He needs a medical transfer. There's many ways to support Leonard through his beautiful artwork, through merchandise that we have on the ad hoc committee website. We have a GoFundMe. You can also just donate directly to his legal funds and to his medical transfer funds. You can check all that out at www.freeleonardpeltiernow.org. I highly urge you to join the Action Network, which is our newsletter. That'll keep you in touch with all calls to action and things that are relevant and happening with Leonard Peltier's case. You can find us on social media, Instagram at @IamPeltier, on Facebook at the official Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee. And I will just say that this further speaks to the vendetta of the FBI and the powers that be and the government in the United States of America that will go to great lengths to silence not just Leonard Peltier, but all political prisoners. Mumia, the Uhuru Three, Oso Blanco, Joy Pal, the list goes on and on. So it's not just about Leonard, it's about all political prisoners and doing what is right and freeing our elders from prison. So in the spirit of Crazy Horse, I say, what's the call? Free them all. Thank you. I have a bunch of trifolds over here with information about Leonard. And thank you for being here with us today. Free Leonard Peltier, free them all. Peace, y'all. Thank you.
Perhaps the most important struggle before us today is the U.S. abetted Zionist genocide of the Palestinian people. None of us have ever seen anything like this in our lifetime. And the fact that a new generation of young people is in the streets, violating the laws that the universities have invented for the first time ever, cutting off their free speech, free assembly rights, and lying that opposition to colonial Zionist, racist Israel is akin to anti-Semitism. A few days ago, the United Nations, for the first time in history, in accord with the International Criminal Court of the UN, condemned the Zionist state and affirmed that they are committing genocide. That opens the door to the minds of people, but that doesn't mean the United States is going to abide by it. It's going to continue as it had to allocate tens of billions of dollars. Our next speaker is Omar Jaja. He's a representative of one of the most prestigious Palestinian organizations in the United States, the U.S. Palestinian Community Network. Let's give him a warm welcome and hear some terrible truths and what we can do to keep the United States hands off the Palestinian people and to mobilize the United Front, mass action, independent, democratic movement like we did in Vietnam to stop this war. Thank you.
The restrooms are in the back on the left, and for speakers, there is water on the stage.
All right, thank you. My name is Omar Zaza. I am an assistant professor of Arab Muslim ethnicities and diasporas, Ahmed Studies and Race and Resistance Studies at San Francisco State University. And I am here with you today on behalf of the U.S. Palestinian Community Network, a Palestinian and Arab community-based organization Founded in 2006 to revitalize grassroots organizing in Palestinian and Arab communities in the U.S. as part of the broader Palestinian nation in exile in the homeland. And I'm also a member of a newly formed Faculty for Justice in Palestine at San Francisco State University. So it's an honor to be here with you today in the presence of so many formidable comrades, activists, writers, and thinkers. While my time is short, there's a few observations I'd like to reflect on with all of you here tonight. And the first, fortunately, is one that is going to be repetition by this point, which is that there is a lot to celebrate given the freedom of Julian Assange. Those of us who spend our lives dedicated to struggles for liberation and against repression know how important the act of celebration can be precisely because we are so used to the opposite. You don't fight state repression and global and structural systems of violence, dispossession, and extraction and expect to come out with an infallibly high track record of wins. Resistance is difficult by design, and so every triumph for anti-oppressive struggle is in a sense a double victory, worthy of celebration in and of itself, and also for its symbolic and political import, constituting as it does an unexpected demonstration of how repression's tide is not irreversibly progressive. It can be blocked, it can be kept at bay, and on some occasions, ultimately redirected. Assange's freedom is a celebration-worthy occasion for himself, his family, his loved ones, and also for every journalist, writer, and truth-teller dedicated to the struggle for a liberated world. But this brings me to the second observation. Just as we have much to celebrate, we also have much to mourn. Many of us can't even keep up with the work of mourning. Nearly 1 year into the Zionist entity's most heinous genocide of Palestinians, with the death toll now exceeding 41,431 according to the Gaza Ministry of Health, over 41,431, and 95,818 Palestinians wounded. Its appetite for destruction insatiable, the Zionist state has even taken to launching the most depraved assaults upon Lebanon in recent history. Witnessing the relentless viciousness of the Zionist colonial regime, its apparent commitment to dispensing nearly every permutation of violence known to the human imagination, it's no wonder that the sharing of the latest updates is often prefaced with the phrase, "no words." And that gets me to the final observation. The spectacle of genocidal colonial violence is meant to shock us into silence. We have words and a duty to deploy them. We know, of course, that the mere articulation of counter-hegemonic expression doesn't mean victory in and of itself. Indeed, it can mean repression, as Assange's case shows, as we're seeing explode across the nation now, as scores of brave Palestinians, students, faculty, journalists, and all in alliance with them are subjected to criminalization and demonization by craven administrative and political offices and their corporate media. And just as the example of every Palestinian journalist, intellectual, and writer from the present throughout history assassinated for daring to resist the Zionist settler project demonstrates, Israel's assassination, and there's no other word for it, of at least 173 Palestinian journalists since October 7th is but the latest manifestation of a long-standing colonial policy whose impunity is secured by the dictates of U.S. imperialism. But we don't speak resistance just for our current moment or for ourselves. We speak resistance to show that there must be another way, and in the hope that others who are inspired will repeat what they hear, say it louder, better, stronger. We speak resistance to give symbolic prefiguration to the material reality that must come to pass. We say from the river to the sea precisely because we know Palestine will be free. Yes. We must keep speaking out, and above all else, continue to amplify and support the causes of all of us who continue to be repressed for speaking out. Free Palestine.
Let me hear it again. Free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Thank you. Gabriella Wells, could you come up here? She has Kevin Cooper, an innocent man on death row for 40 years. Kevin, can you hear me?
I'm going to put him up to the mic. But,
Okay.
Yeah.
Put him up so I can say hello.
And I was going to introduce him. Okay, here.
Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes, Jeff, I can hear you.
We have an audience of 100 people, and we want to welcome you and pledge our continued support for your freedom. Gabriella will begin the meeting. Thank you with love and solidarity from all of us tonight. Jeff Mackler.
No, I was going to say a few words about, I was going to say a few words about you first. Okay, so we can kind of be here together. I'm the state death penalty abolition coordinator for Amnesty International. Kevin is one of our cases. He's also a dear spirit brother to me. Kevin is 66 years old. He is an amazing human, and he has been incarcerated for nearly 40 years in California. Sorry, I have to see this. So he's been on California's death row despite claims of actual innocence and prosecutorial misconduct, withholding of evidence, tampering of evidence, destruction of critical evidence, and overt racial bias, otherwise known as racism. He was convicted of the brutal 1983 quadruple Ryan Hughes murders. He was sentenced to death in 1985. Following a trial where evidence that could have exonerated him was in fact withheld or destroyed. In 2004, he came just 3 hours and 42 minutes from execution, and thank all the deities in every direction and his lawyer. He received a stay in the final hours. He is an ardent human rights defender, abolitionist, writer, orator, and a prolific artist. He actively fights for exoneration, freedom for the death penalty, freedom and for death penalty abolition, where he's situated at California Healthcare Facility in Stockton, California. To learn more about his case, there's a fact sheet on the back table. There's some postcards with some of his artwork, and you can actually follow his case. There's a bunch of links and QR code, etc., to learn more about him. Without any more delay, let's hear it from Kevin. Kevin, are you ready?
This call will be monitored and recorded.
Good evening. It is often said by certain people in this world that the truth will set you free. But we all know that that's a bold-faced lie. Just ask Julian Assange, who spent almost a decade behind bars for exposing the truth and for speaking the truth. Many in this country and in this world are more concerned with winning than they are with truth. But not us. Not we who are artists, activists, humanitarians, freedom fighters, and revolutionaries. We're only concerned with one thing, and that is speaking truth to power. We did so yesterday, we are doing so today, and we will continue to do so tomorrow. Why? Quite simply, that's what we do. Because we understand that truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. You just let it loose, and it will defend itself. Throughout this history of this world, we have paid one hell of a high price for speaking truth, but we won't stop no matter what. Alice Walker once stated that activism is the rent she pays for living on this planet. I wholeheartedly agree, but I just hope more people will pay that kind of rent. Julian Assange did, didn't he?
Yeah.
In the struggle and solidarity from death row, I'm Kevin Cooper.
Can you take a picture?
Free Kevin Cooper.
Free Kevin Cooper.
Kevin Cooper. Free Kevin Cooper. Free Kevin Cooper.
So you can feel the love. There's a lot of love for you here in this room, Kevin.
Yes.
And a bunch of people who actually know you as well. Please join this fight in helping us free Kevin, and you can find the information on the fact sheet and also the postcards in the back. Do you have any other words, Casey?
Yeah. Free Palestine.
Woo!
What do you say?
Free Palestine. Okay.
We're all one people. We all deserve to be free.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a picture of everybody for him. It goes straight into the app. You can ignore me, but it goes, he's going to get it in real time. I mean, it might take a while to go through. If you don't mind, yes, thank you for reading my mind. I'll get a couple. Thank you. And you can keep talking. I'm just going to do this as
I want to say that several decades ago, I was listening to KPFA, and they had this very unusual guy named Dennis Bernstein, who is the host of Flashpoints. And his co-host was a dear friend of mine, Leslie Kane. And she heard about this man who was accused of brutally killing, hacking them to pieces, 4 people, as he broke out of a prison in Chino, California. And she was a little bit nervous about meeting with Kevin. So she asked me, a big guy, if I could come and accompany her. And I did. And I met a kind, gentle, honest man who detailed his innocence in terms that were unbelievable. But at the time, the investigations were ongoing, and with the help of Dennis and Leslie Kane and others, all of the facts that proved that Kevin was guilty were proved to be fabrications, including people who admitted to the murder of these people. And Kevin has been suffering on death row for 40 years. And under California's new law, which was approved by the legislature, the governor had the right to set up a truth commission to investigate the facts, and Newsom, the governor, did so, and it was a fake commission. And the findings of that commission are being appealed by Kevin's team, which is one of the best defense teams in the state of California. I think it's the ORIC team.
I'm just gonna, sorry, it was a one and only time that Newsom was asked to do an innocence investigation. What Kevin got was a sham of an investigation. It wasn't an innocence investigation. No, he's going to be he's being represented under the California Racial Justice Act.
Okay, under the new Racial Justice Act.
Yeah, it passed.
Okay. Anyway, we want to see Kevin back with us. And only by fighting like this, free them all, and uniting the entire movement can we do that. Our next speaker I met when she was a lovely green-eyed young woman, and we walked together down the streets of Helsinki, Finland at the World Youth Festival. I was 22, and we were singing everywhere the youth are singing Freedom's song. For we are the youth, and we want to build a world of truth. That young woman today is still a beautiful young woman. Some 60 years later, she is a Pulitzer Prize novelist and the author of The Color Purple, the author of some dozen books on social justice questions, a lifelong political anti-war social justice activist. Let's give a warm welcome to Alice Walker.
What?
No, we can't see your face.
Oh, you can't see my face. That's because I'm short. It was really wonderful to be on that train with you, buried so long ago, and who knew it would end up in Berkeley. I'm very happy to be here. I have so many things I would like to share with you, but I brought some poems, which I will definitely, if the lighting is good and my glasses work, I will read to you. But I'd also just like to say a few things about the joy I feel that you're here, that we're here. We could be somewhere else. You know, we could be trying to forget what we know. We know a lot, and it's painful. And we could be somewhere trying to just be regular, quote, Americans and not know. When I went to visit Mumia twice on death row, what stayed with me and stays with me to this moment is that when I left, my heart was light. And it was light because he is light. He is the most extraordinary person. And when I went to visit Julian Assange, I left feeling a different feeling. I was really annoyed with him because he had at that time what I considered such a Western white male arrogance. And we got into a fight because I was trying to explain to him that my father should have been a mathematician instead of being a sharecropper. And he was trying to explain to me that he could not have been a mathematician, but only someone who knew arithmetic. I really wanted to slap him. However, you know, things change and you get to know people at a greater depth, and hopefully they get to know you at a greater depth. And we became colleagues of sorts. And here we are. You know, I look out at you and feel very happy that we're on the same side. And so I'm going to start, and if I have ample time, I'd like to read you a couple of poems, if that would be good for you. What do you think? Okay. One of the things that I really understand is that when people abuse you so badly, as the Israelis have abused the Palestinians for so long and so terribly, that feeling has to be rooted in envy. They envy those people. They envy them desperately. And over this last year, and I've actually been, you know, attuned to this for decades, and really seeing this, seeing how the anger, you know, the desire to destroy them, it comes from a place that is so empty. It comes from a place that is so sad. You know, I mean, it's almost as if these are people looking at what they might have been. You know, I don't know about anybody here. I know some of you have been to Palestine. But I was so moved by the people, you know, that there they were struggling against these horrible conditions. And like we in the South, you know, black people in the South, they still had their souls. They still had their heart. They still had their music. They still had their dance. They still had their hospitality to strangers. They had no envy of the Israelis. Anyway, and here's this poem that speaks to this. They will always be more beautiful than you. Think about that. They will always be more beautiful than you, the people you're killing. The people you're killing, they will always. You think it is hatred that you feel, but it's really envy. You imagine that if you destroy them, we will forget how tall they stood, how level their gaze, how straight their backs, how even the littlest ones stood their little ground. You stand hunched as a cobbler in your absurd killer's gear, yelling like a crazy person, your face contorted, dripping sweat from what would be, with or without your lethal weapons, a bullying brow and feral chin. Killing everyone, but especially children, for sport. Looking cool in your own mind as you crunch bones beneath your boot. You crunch bones beneath your boot that are still forming. Conquering. Don't forget the entertainment value of your daily work for the folks back home who witness from the hillsides in their lounge chairs. What beautiful fun. We're not like those people being broken over there, they tell each other. And for this moment, they are right, they are not. But what does this mean for broken humanity? Take your camera, selfie that. These poems were written a few years ago, and it just shows that, what we're seeing now is like the culmination of a long murder, a long destruction, a long genocide. And it's in some ways shameful that it has taken this horror to awaken people. I know we're all distracted, deliberately distracted. But still, it says something not good about our attentiveness to what is happening, to the genocides on the planet. And this is not, of course, the first one. What about Africa? What about the Congo right this minute? Refugees. They would not be running to us if we were not chasing them with the guns and bombs and rockets we sold to crazy people. Out of their houses, out of their schools, out of their mosques, churches, synagogues, away from their favorite prayer trees. You are guilty, America, of arming the world. If you could, and to make money, you'd arm the universe. Remember Ronald Reagan talking about Star Wars when he could barely walk, let alone handle a laser? That's how deep it is. Our country's need could control the earth, that it never seems to care about otherwise. But it is not our country that is at fault. It is the entities who have taken it over. The entities who have taken it over, who might not even be from here. Think Elon. Who might not even be from here, which is my own belief, but from some distant star they camouflaged as heaven to make us think they were special. Angels even. Angels even. And not rapists of planets through the terror and manipulation of war. The world rising, and this is where we are now. We are a world rising. Hallelujah. We are. We finally, it's cost so much. All those children, all those women, all those fathers, all those everybody. And we woke up. We woke up. We're awake. We're awake. The world rising can put an end to anything. We have to believe that. We can't not believe that. We have to believe that and keep rising. The world rising can put an end to anything. The murder of children, whales, elephants, forests, oceans. Get up. Roll over on that part of you that will not welcome, recognize, encourage, or even see our rise. A compassionate roll. We must be done with cruelty, especially to ourselves. To start again, beaming like the sun. Beaming. Start again, beaming like the sun. Fresh. But a roll that shows we reach the end of polite moves to repair and recreate the earth. Polite. Forget about politeness. We've reached the end of that. We've reached the end of polite moves to repair and recreate the earth. And we'll press hard on any parts of us, even those we've loved, that insist on remaining oblivious and asleep. So that is where we are. We have awakened the world. You can clap if you want to. We are awake, and it's interesting because we are awake at a time when the earth in its ability to teach us to destroy ourselves is also awake. So the war is the other side. I mean, the war, the big war, is staring us in the face as well. It's almost as if we woke up just in time to face eternal sleep. And then the question would be, do we still want to be awake? And I do. I really think we deserve, I really do think we deserve to be awake, partly because of what our ancestors have suffered. You know, they prayed for us to see the light. You know, it was a light that was so confusing to them. You know, like, how can it be so horrible? I grew up in the South. You know, your life meant so little. Your children's lives meant nothing, really. When the cotton plantations folded, they had no more use for us. That's what we grew up in. And yet, you know, now, you know, it could be ending for everyone. The weapons exist. And at the same time, so do we. We've come this far to be awake at the time when we could be put to sleep forever. I can't tell you how happy I feel that this room is full, that somehow we managed to find this place. I didn't quite know where it was. But this is always true. You know, some of us, the people in this room, will always be in this room. We will always come. We will always be here. And that in itself is a victory for the people, and ultimately, I hope, for the planet.
Thank you, Alice Walker, for your work today and for a lifetime of dedication to humanity. We now have a wonderful group headed by Francisco Javier Herrera, who wrote a magnificent song in collaboration with a guy named Dennis Bernstein. And by the way, since I mentioned Dennis, a representative of KPFA asked my permission if they could broadcast this meeting as part of their fund drive. I thought I'd put the motion to you. All those in favor say aye. Aye! Thank you so much. Francisco Herrera, Dennis Bernstein, and friends at KPFA for this song.
So I've asked Dennis to just say a sentence about how he came down to putting these words together.
Thank you. Francisco Herrera is a gift to our community, to the region. Can you hear me okay now? Yeah. Francisco Herrera, our brother, is a troubadour of deep passion and vision. And he's been traveling this hemisphere, speaking truth to power with his beautiful instrument. It was an honor to work with Francisco on creating an anthem to speak to the shutdown of information by one of the most important publisher writers in this century. Somebody who not only spoke truth to power, but he invented a structure, an informational structure that allowed journalists who had extraordinarily important information to get it out. And that included, of course, war crimes. And when it came to war crimes committed by the United States wouldn't hear of it. There was a release collateral murder. You know what happened to Chelsea Manning after she released that. So I'm thinking we go one program after another program after another program, and we're not getting anywhere. It's powerful, but nobody seems to be listening or acting. So for me, the word was incredibly important. And we had Francisco, so we decided we wanted to write this anthem. And so here it is, yeah? And just, can I say thank you to Alice Walker for that extraordinary reading. And the reason we went to music is because somehow music and poetry somehow transcends the mundaneness and gets right to the heart. And I like that, going right to the heart. Francisco Herrera.
Sing it with me. Free Julian now. Free Julian now. Free, free, free Julian now. Together, ready? Free Julian now. Free Julian now. Military chopper opens fire, instruments of genocide. WikiLeaks unmasked the lies of orders queued by Central Command. Gun-sight video nails the murder scene down. The truth about the war machine. It's getting late in the hour. Don't wait another minute to speak truth to power. Sing it with me. Julian told the truth about the war machine. Ready? Julian told the truth about the war machine. Getting late in the hour. It's getting late in the hour. Don't wait another minute. Don't wait another minute to speak truth to power. Hey, hey, hi, oh, hey, hi, hey, hey, hi. Victims of smart bombs went up in flames, Baghdad on fire. Julian Assange gave that a name. Collateral murder, a family shredded and maimed, journalists died. Who will remember their names? Who will remember? Will you remember? Can you name them? All right, please.
We can name Salif Talal Hussein al-Baqa, murdered for the crime of journalism in Iraq. Say their names. We remember Mushal Wahid, Saeed Sadat, and Shanab Louif, murdered in Jalalabad for the unforgivable crime of journalism. We remember Witness Louis St. Long, murdered for the unforgivable crime of journalism in Haiti. We remember Mumia, imprisoned, entombed for the unforgivable crime of journalism. Jamal Khashoggi, sawed to death for the unforgivable crime of journalism, and many, many others. And the bodies stack up in Palestine endlessly.
It doesn't help to shield my eyes. The camera's still rolling deep inside the mind. History is watching us. Which side are you on? Free Julian now. Free Julian now. Free, free, free Julian now. Let me hear you strong. Free Julian now. Free Julian now. Free, free, free Julian now. Free, 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 ready. Free, free, free Julian. Tell your neighbor, tell your friend. Write the Congress and the President. Free, free, free Julian now. Libertad para Julian now. Que se oiga esta voz. Free, free, free Julian now. He spoke for you and me, and we will set him free now. Free, free, free Julian now. Julian told the truth. Ready? Julian told the truth about the war machine. It's getting late in the hour. Don't wait another minute to speak truth to power.
Thank you, Francisco Herrera and Dennis Bernstein. I have, by the way, when Vinny DiStefano went up to point to those pictures, they are all assassinated journalists all around the world, or imprisoned journalists for telling the truth. Hundreds of journalists have been slaughtered in Palestine and the West Bank today simply for telling the truth, for photographing the truth, for reporting the statistics, and for demanding freedom for the Palestinian people. Those photographs were sent around the United States by people like Vinny DiStefano and the Assange Foundation. A few facts that are important, and I'm going to ask Vinny to help out in this, maybe Roger too when I need your help. When Julian was forced, rather than serve 175 years in prison, to an agreement pleading guilty to one count under the Espionage Act, It was either that or die in prison.
Yes.
And he was near death. And he's still very ill, and that's why we can't have him speak today. We tried real hard. But they forced Julian to pay for the cost of his plane fare home from England from London to Australia. And guess how much that cost was? Roughly $320,000.
Actually, Jeff,
To fly him.
$250,000. 520 pounds.
Oh, 520 pounds.
$750,000 for the flight.
Just so he could fly home.
They wouldn't allow him to go on a commercial airline, which
That's
cost
right.
a couple of $100.
For virtually nothing. But his friends, through, what do you call that fundraising thing? GoFundMe, raised that money. But Julian is still, because I was going to ask you for $750,000. But that debt is paid. But Julian is fighting for his exoneration and for a pardon, so he doesn't have anything over his head. And he's still paying for incredible amounts of legal expenses and other related expenses for the freedom movement. That's why we continue this meeting. So I'd like to ask you to make a donation today in a special kind of collection that I'm familiar with. Before this meeting began, we had $1,000 in expenses for bringing people here by plane and for other expenses. And a handful of wonderful people paid that $1,000. And I'm wondering whether or not there is anyone here tonight who would like to match it by contributing $1,000 towards Julian's Defense Committee, which is a 501c3 Courage Foundation, which all of us are supporters of, and is raising the money to pay Julian's continued legal expense. Does anybody here have $1,000 they'd like to contribute? Okay, let's see if we can do it another way. How about two people contributing $500 each? And I'm asking my wife, Carol, to keep her hand down because as we've already contributed an awful lot of money. Do I see a $500 contribution? How about 200 or more? Okay, Roger Harris has contributed. How about a round of applause for Roger? Anyone else that wants to contribute $200?
I will if somebody will join me.
Okay, Phoebe says yes if someone will join her.
I'll join her.
Okay, there's one more. That's 400, 600, and Toby is 800. Vince is 1,000. So we have $1,000. So we've now raised 2,000, and let's start with $100. Who can contribute? By the way, you can do this online through simply going to CodePink.
Yes.
It's Eventbrite. I don't have it here. What is it?
Yep, Dennis has 100 right there.
Oh, Dennis has 100. Long live Dennis Bernstein and KPFA. Joe Lombardo has 100 from the United National Anti-War Coalition. And Cynthia from CodePink, Cynthia Papermaster, has another 100. And here is another 100 and another 100 anymore. So I think we're up to $3,000. I'll contribute another 100, so that make it 3. Any more $100 contributions? Are you clapping your hand back there, or is that $100? She's clapping. My wife, Carol Coomer, who I love more than you can ever imagine, is contributing $100. Any more at 100? How about $50? Anybody can afford $50. There's 1, 2, 3, If you scratch your head, you count as $50. Yes? 4. 5, Rick Sterling from Mount Diablo Peace and Justice Center. And Rick is a regular contributor. So if you contribute, it's, just refresh my memory, it's CodePink. What is it?
Assange 922.
CodePink / or is it codepink.org? Codepink.org. It's on the back of your program, I think. Yes. Okay, codepink.org. Pick up your phone and you can do it. Assange 922. That's today's date. Codepink.org. What? /Assange.org. And you can contribute. Anyone who contribute any amount, I'm going to ask Vinny to get the buckets and pass it around. Raise your hand if you can contribute anything tonight, in addition to what you did. That's $10, $20, $25. If I've missed you, raise your hand and you can put it in the bucket. All checks can be made payable to Courage Foundation, which is a 501c3. If you don't have a check on you, you can fill out the form here on the back of the flyer and send in your name and address, and we'll email you and get you the money and the information. Just fill out the form, put it in the bucket, and we're all set. Okay, let's continue with the program. Margaret Kimberly traveled 3,000 miles to be with us. She didn't understand when I said 6 minutes and I meant 60 minutes. But seriously, Margaret, now retired, travels all over the country speaking, among other things, for the Black Alliance for Peace and the Black Agenda Report, a magnificent journalist who tells the truth. Let's welcome with a hearty round of applause, Margaret Kimberly. Thanks, Margaret.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Jeff. Good evening. Good evening. And power to the people.
Power to the people.
Power to the people.
Power to the people.
Thank you so much. As Jeff said, I'm Margaret Kimberly. I'm executive editor of Black Agenda Report. And I want to thank all the organizers of this event, and in particular, Jeff Mackler. We are both on the administrative committee of the United National Anti-War Coalition, and I want to thank him for bringing me here. And yes, yesterday I was speaking at another Assange event in New York City. I said, well, of course I can get on a plane and go to California the next morning. But it's a pleasure to speak of Julian Assange as a free man and not as a captive. But I want to try to connect his case with other issues of imperialism and domestic and state repression, some of which are so present but have become so normalized that they're ignored. How did Assange become a political prisoner? Well, the easy answer is he and his organization, WikiLeaks, revealed what the state did not want people around the world to know. Among them, the war crimes committed by the Bush administration through their Iraq war logs and Afghanistan war logs, Private Chelsea Manning leaking the collateral murder video, which showed the deaths of the Iraqi journalists that we've already discussed, killed by a U.S. Army helicopter crew in 2007. And collateral murder was released in 2010 during the Obama administration. And it's interesting, all of the supposed differences between Democrats and Republicans disappear when U.S. hegemony is in need of being protected. And while the Obama Justice Department chose not to indict Assange, they laid the groundwork for Donald Trump to get his hands on him. And these revelations had already put Assange in the crosshairs, but he really angered the ruling class with his revelations about Hillary Clinton and her presidential campaign in 2016. A leaker revealed to Assange that the Democrats had rigged their process. And when the story broke, Assange became public enemy #1, with Clinton's ostensible opponent, Donald Trump, doing the dirty work later on. They hand off the crime to the next. So, and I have to point this out, and here we are in another rigged election year, aren't we? Ironically, it's Donald Trump who actually went through a primary process and was chosen by his party's voters, while the Democratic Party oligarchs lied about Biden's health, but then pushed him through, knowing he was unable to stay in the race in order to put Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket. It's unfortunate that there's no whistleblower giving us the inside scoop this year, but Assange was made an example of, and no one wants to repeat that experience and act like a real journalist ought to. Obama's unprecedented use of the Espionage Act sent other whistleblowers to jail and gave Trump license to get his hands on Assange with the 17-count indictment in 2018. But those charges were useless as long as the Ecuadorian government continued to give him refuge, give him asylum in their embassy in London. What to do? No problem. Interfere with the Ecuadorian government. Get rid of the government that was protecting him. And his protections were lifted. And of course, Joe Biden followed Trump policy and continued the DOJ prosecution. But Assange's case was not going in the direction that the U.S. wanted. The possibility that the British High Court of Justice would hear his claim of acting within the U.S. First Amendment's guarantee of the right to speak moved the Biden administration to offer Assange a plea deal rather than risk losing in court. But his freedom, as others have said, has come with the price for all of journalism. He had to plead guilty to one charge of violating the Espionage Act, and thus journalism can still be criminalized in the United States. So we all understand that Assange was a political prisoner, but he's not alone. Prisoners are held here in the U.S., in California, like the late Rochelle McGee, who was held for decades. They're held longer than political prisoners anywhere else in the world, only released, and these are prisoners from the liberation movement I'm referring to specifically, who are only released when they're elderly and at the point of death, if they're released at all. But prisoners of conscience are not the only political prisoners in this country. The U.S. Gulag has some 2 million political prisoners. As Jeff Mackler pointed out, this country has the largest prison population in the world. People are locked in some say the mass incarceration system, others the prison industrial complex, call it what you will. But this system was brought into being as a means of hastening the destruction of the Black liberation movement. And that means the 3 strikes laws and crack powder cocaine sentencing disparities were political acts. But you in this state have an opportunity to get rid of one of the worst aspects of the U.S. prison system, prison slavery. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution makes the exception allowing involuntary servitude for punishment of crime. And this gulag I refer to, it's not just the biggest in the world, but it has the most draconian sentencing and forces incarcerated people to work for pennies a day, and in some states for nothing at all. Fast food restaurants, if you live in Alabama, McDonald's, your burger was made by somebody in prison. So as California voters, you can vote on propositions that I've been reading about. Vote no on Proposition 36, which would increase penalties for low-level drug and other offenses and expand this terrible system. And you should vote yes on Proposition 6 to end prison slavery. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't speak of the Uhuru 3, Omali Yeshitela, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville, recently convicted of thought crime, conspiracy to be foreign agents of Russia. They were found not guilty of violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, but guilty of conspiracy, a means that prosecutors use to secure convictions with a multitude of spurious charges. And I hope I've succeeded in tying together domestic repression and racism, duopoly, collusion, and imperialism. That was my goal anyway, to connect Julian Assange with Omali Yeshitela. That's necessary because we're fighting on so many fronts. That's especially important during an election year when we're deliberately confused about this system and told that there's some grand difference between two wings of the same bird. Our work will be the same regardless of who's elected. Everything I've mentioned is connected, and we must show concern and dedication to defending peace, freedom, and human life. And I began by saying, power to the people. That is all that can possibly save us now. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Margaret Kimberly. Margaret mentioned the recent trial result of Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru 3. We have Wendy Snyder coming up and a few speakers from now to tell us those details and why we must be in solidarity with them. Our next speaker is a tireless social justice activist who is a leader in the Bay Area CodePink. Let's give a warm welcome to Cynthia Papermaster, who is always accompanied by goodwill, including her dog Lucky. Let's welcome Lucky as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Lucky's right here. Good evening, everyone. CodePink worked for many, many years to free Julian Assange. We were out in the streets all the time with rallies. There was walks on the Golden Gate Bridge. Toby Monet is here. She would organize those. Thank you, Toby, very much for that. And we are just, we're just thrilled that he's allowed to be free. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? I mean, how often do we get to celebrate something like this? It's just really amazing, and I'm so glad you've all come out tonight. The URL for your donations is on the program. It's if you turn the program sideways where the photos of all the speakers are, you'll find that. And I don't want to not have those donations come in. That's why I'm mentioning that again. Anyway, thank you very much. After the event's over, we're going to have ice cream from Ben & Jerry's, and we have birthday cake and cupcakes for you as well. And I want to give a special thanks to Dennis Bernstein, who's done such an amazing job of not only inviting CodePink to come on and tell what's going on in the activist world in the Bay Area, which we really need, and we need KPFA to do more of that. So Dennis, thank you so much. So that's it. Thank you. Oh, okay. People keep asking me what's going on with my court case. Nancy Pelosi asked the district attorney of San Francisco, Brooke Jenkins, to press felony charges against me for putting diluted washable red paint symbolizing the bloodshed in Gaza that she's responsible for because she won't. Free speech. Right, it's free speech. And anyway, the hearing's been put over, the case has been put over till November 13. So there's really nothing to report at this time. We've asked them to drop the charges. I have a great lawyer, Dan Siegel. But nothing's happening with the case right now, so that's the status. Thank you for asking.
If they put Cynthia in jail, should we form a defense committee to get her out?
Yes! Keep her
You have our commitment, but don't go to jail. We need you out. Our next speaker is one of the magnificent people who worked on the planning committee to bring this meeting together. His name is Rick Sterling, and he's bringing greetings on behalf of the Mount Diablo Peace and Justice Center and probably a half a dozen other organizations, including Syrian organization and many others. Let's welcome Rick Sterling.
Well, thanks very much, Jeff. I think I'll just give a kudos to all of you for being here, to Margaret for flying out from the East Coast. It's wonderful to have you here. We all know how happy Julian's family must be. This is amazing, because this was the trial of our generation. We have known of past generations that had trials that were tests that everybody was involved, where all the powers of the state came down, put people in prison, imprisoned them, and Julian Assange was the one for our generation. And so his freedom now is an amazing victory. So I think we need to thank you. We need to thank all the people. I had a chance to go to Belmarsh Prison and participate. Every week there were people there. They had encampments on the avenue in front of Belmarsh Prison. People were tenting out there, and they were shut down in just the same way that they shut down the encampments, the pro-Palestine encampments, the anti-genocide encampments at Berkeley. And yet the people persisted in London, all around the world, including here. And a big shout out and kudos to Jeff Mackler, because we had protests in front of the Grand Lake Theater. I can remember Cynthia being there. And the song that you heard tonight, the origin of it was a song at that event. Francisco talked to Dennis. Dennis wrote that beautiful poem, and Francisco made the lyrics and made the music to go with it. And that was the origin of it. So thank you and congratulations to all of us, and especially to Julian Assange, because this is a big victory. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick Sterling. Our next speaker, let's give a warm welcome to another long-term, lifelong political activist, social justice fighter on the front lines, Toby Blomé from the Ban Killer Drones organization. Toby, come on up. When I put her name on, I spelled it T-O-B-I-E, and Toby asked me to change it, which I happily did. Welcome, Toby.
Well, I'm very honored to have been asked to even speak for a couple minutes today, and I didn't prepare anything formal, but I just want to say I have always been such an admirer of Julian Assange. He's always been in my heart and my mind since his story broke loose, and his courage and intelligence to face the U.S. war machine and expose the horrible crimes that the U.S. is committing all over the world. And when the news broke out that he was actually getting out, it was probably one of the happiest days of my life. So I think we have a big celebration to do. There's struggle's not over. We do need to work for his pardon. And as Jeff said, I've been working against the U.S. drone program for 15 years with the help of many others. And those of you who have gone down to Creech Air Force Base to stand for a week out and face the U.S. military as they're flooding in thousands of cars going to Creech Air Force Base, the Papa Daddy drone base in southern Nevada, where they're sitting in front of computers and murdering people and doing surveillance, which itself is a horrendous crime. We have no right to do surveillance on the people around the world. So if those of you who've been to Creech, stand up. I want to celebrate you today. There's quite a few in the audience. I know there's one over there, Susan Witka. Nancy's been out there once. Jackie's been maybe a couple times, I think. So we've been doing it for 15 years. We go out there for a week at a time, twice a year in the spring and fall. And a couple years ago, we moved one of our week protests to Holloman, where they trained 700 plus pilots and operators of US drones every year. 700. That's how important this drone program is. We now have US drones flying over Gaza to help Israel with the genocide. And so we are going back to Creech this fall, October 13th to the 19th. You don't have to come for the whole week. Come for a few days. But be out there and have the courage that Julian had to face the US war machine. We don't face the risks that Julian did. That's why I admire him so much. He knew what he was up against, and he took tremendous risk. I love the quote of Alice Walker's, that we as activism is the debt, the rent that we pay to live on this planet. And we have to be courageous and take enormous sacrifice in our lives. Not just sign a petition on a computer every now and then, but do much more. So I celebrate all of you for your activism, and come and talk to me afterwards if you're curious. You can come to Creech for just a few days if you want, but come. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. We have 15 minutes to go, and it looks like we're on schedule because Toby and everybody else is stuck to their time limits. So we're in good shape, and our next speaker is Wendy Snyder from the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Just a few weeks ago, they won a split decision. They're appealing the negative part. They basically were convicted of telling the truth, and they're proud of it. Let's make telling the truth the norm rather than imprisonment. Welcome, Wendy Snyder.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be with the truth tellers. It really is. And like Jeff said, I'm Wendy Snyder. I'm a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Uhuru means freedom. Uhuru Solidarity Movement is an organization that was built by the African People's Socialist Party to organize white people for reparations to African people and to be a part of overturning this rotten colonial system and colonial mode of production, as the chairman, Omali Yeshitela, has described it. It's just really, it's an honor to be a part of this victory celebration. I look forward to talking to a lot of people. I was like, I'm just going to be gone for 2 hours. And, I'm thinking like, yeah, I want to stay for ice cream and talk to you and all that too. But I'll just say that we are really, really just excited to celebrate the victory of the freedom of Julian Assange and just the war crimes of U.S. empire that he exposed and woke so many people up to, and just how much he contributed to this movement against U.S. imperialism. And we have to embrace this victory in this ongoing fight back against imperialism, colonialism, and genocide, and for free speech, justice, and liberation, and the new world that we are building right now. And I want to extend solidarity and unity with the celebration of free Julian Assange and towards the freedom of Leonard Peltier, Mumia Abu-Jamal, Kevin Cooper, and all the political prisoners, as has been mentioned, the 2 million people who are being held captive, most of them African and indigenous peoples inside this, what also the Uhuru movement has described as a prison of nations. And so I just want to briefly share the victory and the ongoing struggle for hands off Uhuru, which many, many individuals and organizations right here have been very, very supportive of, including including the committee to free Julian Assange. We are so grateful for your support. So 10 days ago, on September 12th, a jury in a federal courthouse in Tampa, Florida, rejected the most serious charge of the U.S. government's egregious frame-up of the Uhuru 3, an attack on free speech, by finding Chairman Amalia Shatella, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville not guilty of being agents of the U.S. government. And I just want to say that is a victory, because so few people stand up. It would take Chairman Amalia Shatella to stand up to, it's like 0.04% of people who go to trial. Most of them take plea deals, and so this is a tremendous victory. And so I just urge you to go to handsoffuhuru.org. I quote Chairman Amalia Shatella, who says, "The Uhuru 3 verdict is in. We work for Black people, not Russia. The U.S. government lied and lost. The Uhuru movement told the truth and won." And I also continue his quote, "The prosecutors unleashed a barrage of lies and distortions of the law, along with deliberately confusing jury instructions to mislead the jury into returning an inconsistent verdict, convicting the Uhuru 3 on the lesser charge of conspiracy to commit an offense against the United States, which we intend to appeal and are confident we will win. But more importantly, the jury's not guilty verdict on the, quote, Russian agents charge means that the jurors agreed with the legitimacy of our efforts to advocate for the liberation of Africa and African people. We congratulate the jury for their ability to see through the U.S. government's attempt to criminalize criticism by the African liberation movement of the U.S. government's treatment of African people in the U.S. So as we embrace, the victory of a free Julian Assange, as we embrace this victory of the Uhuru 3 being found not guilty of being Russian agents, we want to grow our anti-imperialist, anti-colonial free speech movements, for a free Palestine, for free Leonard Peltier, for free them all, as has been said. So we're just calling on everyone to go to Hands Off Uhuru. I do have some outdated now pamphlets, but go there. We're asking people to submit letters to the judge. Not all the details are there, but they will be very soon. The sentencing hearing is November 25th in Tampa, Florida. So if you can swing it, we want to pack that courthouse again. Also, I just want to point out that there is the annual Black is Back Coalition, Black People's March on the White House, November 2nd. So, we stand, with the truth tellers. We're excited for this celebration and victory. And I also just want to end by saying, free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Thank you, Wendy. In case you didn't know, on the screen, that's Julian and Stella and their 2 kids. And they're there because of us and everyone else. Our next speaker needs no introduction. He's the magnificent host of KPSA's Flash Brunch. He's been there for 150 years. Let's welcome Dennis Bernstein.
I'm tired, and I know you all are tired, so I'm going to keep this short and sweet. And I am deeply grateful for all the extraordinarily good energy that is in this building tonight. I, for one, needed to feel it and feel the unity, so thank you for that. Thank you, Jeff, for putting this together. I just want to remind people that the power of the media, how important it is to have an independent media. Some of you will remember that in 1999, I was arrested and dragged out of my own newsroom. Why? Because I have obtained a memo that that was an indication that our new board at the time had a brilliant idea for KPFA and Pacifica, and it had nothing to do with being a community radio station. So we intercepted a note between one board member and another, and we had to essentially sit down to stand up to save our radio station. So in 1999, I and a bunch of my colleagues were taken out of beautiful KPFA in handcuffs. And that board, that visionary board, had hired a whole bunch of former CIA and FBI agents to lock down the station. That happened here at KPFA. To me, that was the only time I've been arrested in my whole life. I'm not your typical sort of war resistor. I don't put my hands in handcuffs. That's not my style. I'm not putting it down. I just don't do it. You know, if they're going to come and get me, they're going to have a reason, and they're going to come find me, and they're going to come take me away. I'm just saying this because, again, information is power. And within an hour of me coming here today, I heard some idiot, I don't know, please forgive me, but it was about how this was a problem with Lebanon, but until Israel and Netanyahu can find a negotiating partner, you know, Hamas. And the story ended. You know what I'm saying. Truth to power, independent media is crucial. I thank the people who have been with us for many years for understanding how important it is. And I want to do two more things. I want to thank Alice Walker for her poetry, because really, Alice, for me, it's been sort of a grief reconstruction kit. You know, it's sort of like I'm raging, I'm suffering, I'm crying, and then I'm reading poetry. And I love poetry over the information flow that I do, because it sort of skips the brain and goes right to the heart. And forgive me, but I'm going to read a poem. It's not mine. And the poetry teacher that we shared, and Muriel Rukeyser, was talking about the different ways you can to respond to a poem. And she said you can be silent, you can make love, or another poem. So this is for you, Alice, and for folks who haven't heard it. This is a poem. I don't have my glasses here. I hope I can see this. This is a poem by Nazim Hikmet, who lived 1902 to 1963. Turkish, most of his life in Turkey. A good chunk of his life in prison, because some military cadets took one of his poems and put it up on the wall, a poem about liberation. And so they came and arrested him and gave him 14 years in jail. He wrote this poem. Some advice to those who will serve time in prison. If instead of being hanged by the neck, you're thrown inside for not giving up hope in the world, your country, and people, if you do 10 or 15 years apart from the time you have left, you won't say, better I had swung from the end of a rope like a flag. You'll put your foot down and live. It may not be a pleasure exactly, but it's your solemn duty to live one more day despite the enemy. Part of you may live alone inside, while a stone at the bottom of a well, like a stone at the bottom of a well, but the other part must be so caught up in the flurry of the world that you shiver there inside, when outside at 40 days' distance, a leaf moves. To wait for letters inside, to sing sad songs, or to lie awake all night or to lie awake all night staring at the ceiling is sweet but dangerous. Look at your face from shave to shave. Forget your age. Watch out for lice and for spring nights, and always remember to eat every last piece of bread. Also, don't forget to laugh heartily, and who knows, the woman you love may stop loving you. Don't say it's no big thing. It's like the snapping of a green branch to the man inside. To think of roses and gardens inside is bad. To think of seas and mountains is good. Read and write without rest. And I also advise weaving and making mirrors. I mean, it's not that you can't pass 10 or 15 years inside, and more you can, as long as the jewel on the left side of your chest doesn't lose its luster. That's Nazim Hikmet. Thank you all for coming. Support Free Speech Radio. Long live Julian Assange. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Our next speaker is the magnificent and literally tireless, without sleep so many times, National Organizing Director of Assange Defense. Let's welcome Vincent DiStefano from Los Angeles. Via New York City, via around the world to fight for Julian's freedom. Vinny, you got the stage.
Okay, I'm sorry to take that beautiful picture of Julian and Stella and Max and Gabriel down. Oh, there we go. I need to get that. And excuse me if I follow in Dennis's footsteps and wax a bit poetic myself as soon as I get this up. And you'll forgive me my piss-poor Spanish. Clavo mi remo en el agua. Llevo tu remo el mío. Creo que he visto una luz al otro lado del río. Sobre todo que no todo es perdido. Tantas lágrimas, yo soy un vaso vacío. Oigo una voz se llama, casi un suspiro, rema, rema, rema. Those words are, put my oar in the water. I take your oar with mine. I believe I see a light on the other side of the river. Above all, I believe that all is not lost, because I've seen a light on the other side of the river. So many tears, and I'm an empty glass. I hear a voice that calls me, almost a sigh. Row, row, row. Now these are the words of a song by Jorge Drexler from the soundtrack of The Motorcycle Diaries, an incredible movie about the early life of the revolutionary hero Che Ernesto Guevara. Yes. During the 7 years that I've been involved with Assange Defense, that song has come to my mind often because it's not only a beautiful song, but because it's a song of hope. And in the struggle, we all need hope. On the West Coast, we put together our first Assange Forum at the UCLA School of Law in February 2019. That was the first time I spoke publicly in defense of Julian Assange, although I had followed his case long before that. That day, I was filled with confidence. Confidence that even if it took a long time, I could see the light on the other side of the river, and that light was Julian's eventual freedom. From that day forward, I worked together with people from around the country and across the country and around the world as we collectively put our oars in the water and pulled together. Unfortunately, as the days, the months, and as we know, years passed, that light began to dim. And especially so the day that Julian was illegally and immorally dragged from the Ecuadorian embassy and incarcerated in Belmarsh prison, which is the British equivalent to the US Gulag, Guantanamo Bay. Wow. The light grew dimmer and dimmer as each year of Julian's unconscionable incarceration continued. Then, I was in London for the final appeal. I had been there several times, but this time I was there to speak along with many others, and we had expected Julian might actually appear in person. However, in the end, he was simply too ill to leave his cell. In fact, he was too ill even to watch the video in that cell. I believe that the light might have gone out at that point. It was a terrible day. However, on that rainy day, I sat in a tent next to Stella Assange, Julian's wife. Now, as I looked at her on the cold, rainy day, we were about to speak to 1,000 activists that had gathered. Those activists, I might add, had been addressed by Vanessa Barrister, the judge in the court, and she asked Julian's team, can you please get those people outside to be quiet because we can't hear what's going on in here. I thought, God damn it, those are the people. You need to listen to them. Now, as I sat with Stella, I looked at her and I saw a weight and a grief lying on her. I thought that if I disturbed her in any way, she would simply crack. She would fall apart like a piece of broken glass. However, when she got up to speak, that grief melted away. And in its place was an incredible strength and an unbelievable courage that emanated her as a brilliant light. I tell you, brothers and sisters, that is a day I will remember till the end of my days. Then on June 24th, something incredible happened. I was on a call at 2 a.m. I plan to sleep when I'm dead because, like Margaret, I flew in from New York last night as well. But I was on at 2 a.m. with the Global Amnesty Action Network. Now, I've been a member of Amnesty International for over 40 years. And we were attempting, women mostly, from around the world to get Amnesty International to grant Julian something that he most justly deserved, and that was prisoner of conscience status so he could be released. We're still working on that so he can be pardoned. But in that call, someone said, my God, I think Julian's made a deal. I think he's going to be free today. That was it for that night. I sat glued to my computer watching the process as it unfolded. And it was a deal. I spent the entire night watching things unfold, and early the next morning, Julian was on a plane to freedom. The light had finally reemerged and burned as bright as the sun that greeted him in Australia when he was with his family. Comrades, we are here today in this celebration to recognize this victory, because it was a victory of activism, a victory of you, a victory of the people. We beat the corrupt British judicial system. We beat the NSA. We beat the CIA. Most importantly, we beat the murderous and immoral, hegemonic beast that is the United States government, which wanted to crush Julian. Now, therefore, and we did it by putting our oars in the water, one at a time together. No single droplet of water thinks it's responsible for the tidal wave. No single snowflake thinks it's possible for the avalanche. But that's what happens. Each of us coming together, pulling our oars in the same direction. So therefore, we come today to celebrate this victory. But at the same time, we come together to use this victory to steel ourselves for the fight that remains, for there is still much to do. Those people on that wall cry out from prison or from their grave and demand we fight for them. So, we must continue to act. We must abolish the 1970 Espionage Act now. We must secure Julian a full and complete pardon. We must continue the struggle to protect journalists and journalism everywhere, for they are still in grave danger. We must continue our work to secure the freedom of all political prisoners, regardless of where they are. And we must put our oars in the water and pull towards the light on the other side of the river, and that light is freedom and justice. Thank you all very, very much. I know a much better speaker than me is waiting, Joe Lombardo, but there's one thing I must say. These celebrations in DC, in New York, and here in Berkeley would not have happened with my comrade, Jeff Mackler, right there. He came up with the concept, he worked on it tirelessly, and he is my hero, and I love you, Jeff. Thank you.
Our next to the last speaker is an old friend of mine for 1,000,000 years. He's a revolutionary to the core. He's the founder of UNAC, the United National Anti-War Coalition. He's traveled around the world organizing against all U.S. wars, including the war against the people in Syria and the US-backed war in Ukraine, not to mention Palestine. Let's give a warm welcome to the National Coordinator of UNAC, Joe Lombardo.
Well, thank you all, and thank you, Jeff. I've known Jeff for a long time, as he said, and all of you who know him know that you've been in a lot of meetings like this, which he has organized, and a lot of demonstrations over the years, fighting for peace and justice and socialism. Jeff is the kind of person that I want to be when I grow up. And also, Vinny, he should have been the last speaker. I shouldn't be the last speaker here. He, for the last period, has organized the Julian Assange campaign and done tremendous work. And if you know Vinny, you know a generous person he is. He compliments you on everything, you know, whether you need it or not, whether you deserve it or not, but he does deserve it. And he's a really important person for the Julian Assange Defense Campaign and for our movement. So thank you, Vinny. The good thing about being the last speaker at a meeting like this is you don't have to say much because it's all been said already. And so I'll keep it short. But I do want to just bring greetings and solidarity to this celebration from the United National Anti-War Coalition, UNAC. The anti-war movement owes a tremendous debt to Julian Assange. He exposed the war crimes, and WikiLeaks exposed the war crimes that the United States government has committed in Iraq, Afghanistan, and really throughout the world for a long period of time. And that's how we build the movement, through truth. And Julian Assange taught us that truth about the war, about the wars, and that's how we were able to build this movement. But I wonder why he did get released at this time. They wanted to put him in jail for 175 years because he told the truth. He told about the war crimes that they tried to hide. They did keep him in jail for about 14 years. They took 14 years out of his life. We should be angry about that, and we should use that anger to organize and to fight back. So why did it happen now? We heard all the terrible things going on in society right now. The Uhuru 3, they're being accused of being Russian agents because they told the truth about Ukraine. You can't have a truth You have to have someone else has to tell you this thing. It has to be Russian agents. So they went after them for that. My friend Scott Ritter, my neighbor, just had his passport taken away because they don't want him to travel around the world and talk to other people and find out what's really going on. Just like he told the truth about in Iraq that there were no weapons of mass destruction and they built a war around them. 1.5 million Iraqis were killed in that war. They didn't like the fact that he told the truth. Last month, they raided his house, the FBI. They took his computers. They took his cell phones. They took all of the archives that he had, a lot of them about the stuff he investigated in Iraq and what he found. They want to bury that. They will never give that back to him. So why? Why did Julian Assange win at this time? Well, Jody Evans made a point, which I think is a real point. They didn't want Julian Assange to come back to this country during this election period. And the reason they didn't is because of you. Because we have a movement. We have an organization. We would have built something even bigger than they did in Britain, in this country, if he came back during this period. During the election campaign, we would have fought for Julian Assange, and they didn't want to see that. They have a big enough trouble dealing with Palestine during this election campaign. I was one of the people at the Democratic Party National Convention. It's the biggest demonstration we had at one of those kind of conventions in many decades. Young people, Palestinian activists coming out to protest. It's a period when Palestinian activists and students on campus are being attacked. When the campus is open this time, they opened with new rules about where you can protest, where you can't protest, what happens if you do protest. In one college in New York, some of the organizers from the protests in the spring, when they came back on campus, they were denied the right to come back on campus. So the next day they tried again, and they wore masks. And everybody else came with them and wore masks also to get them back on campus. You have to figure out creative ways to fight, perhaps, for this thing. So they didn't want Julian Assange during the election campaign to come back to the United States, and they didn't want to see a bigger movement being built, and they were afraid of that. They were afraid of us. And why are they afraid? Well, they're in a lot of trouble right now. Their system is not doing well. Scott Ritter and the Uhuru 3 were being attacked because they were talking about Ukraine. Ukraine is a war you don't hear much about anymore in this country. The U.S. is losing that war. NATO is losing that war. Imperialism is losing that war. But what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in Palestine, has really exposed them. It has exposed Zionism as what it is, the terrible, terrible thing it is. How could you train a whole generation of people in a country to kill children and then dance and cheer about it? But that's what happens, and people saw that. They see it in their pockets, in their cell phones, what they carry around with them. You don't hear much about the killing in Gaza these days. You'll hear a little bit about negotiations or what's going on and so forth, but they don't tell you in the day-to-day. You got to listen to, in the corporate media, Al Jazeera, or look somewhere else. A lot of people looked in their pockets in TikTok, and they saw what was going on from the people broadcasting it inside Gaza, and they knew. So what does the U.S. want to do? It wants to ban TikTok. You can't listen to RT or Sputnik anymore in this country, or Press TV. People's life's work that has been put on video was just taken away by YouTube because they told the truth. They're in a lot of trouble, and there's a movement being built in this country, a great movement. You know, I was part of the anti-war movement against the war in Vietnam. It was a student movement on all the campuses. It was a youth movement. It reached so deep into the consciousness of people. There was a youth rebellion in music, in the clothes, in the culture, in the politics. They didn't trust anybody over 30.
I remember that.
I didn't then either. But now there's a new youth movement on the campus. This is what I've been waiting for many years as an anti-war activist. It's happening. They are in trouble. Their economic structures are being challenged throughout the whole world. They are in trouble. They cannot produce enough with the industry which they moved outside of the country to even conduct this war that they're trying to do in Ukraine. They are in trouble. So what do we have to do? We have a special responsibility, we in the belly of the beast. We must take the anger of the 14 years they stole from Julian Assange, and we must use it to build a movement. We must stay in the streets. We must continue to organize meetings like this, because we will win. We will all be free. We will free the political prisoners. We will open the prisons. We will change this world. What was the term that Alice said? The world is rising. We are today at the beginning of that rising. We are going to be part of that rising, and we will win. Thank you.
Actually, I was mistaken when I said Joe was the last speaker. I had the assignment tonight to talk about Mumia Abu-Jamal's struggle. Yes. I'm the director of the mobilization to free Mumia Abu-Jamal and has been in that position for 40 years. When we first organized protests in San Francisco, we had 25,000 people in the streets and another 25,000 in Philadelphia, and that prevented the racist system in Philadelphia from executing him. He was on death row, slated to be executed, and we stopped that execution. Mumia was the leading critic of the Philadelphia Police Department, the most reactionary in the entire United States. It was cited by the Justice Department for corruption, and its leading officers were jailed for forging evidence, for intimidating witnesses, for framing people up for drugs and prostitution. And Mumia, a leading journalist on a local radio station, cited to be the journalist of the year, was gone after by Frank Rizzo, who was at that time the police chief, racist Rizzo, they became the mayor. He exposed the racism of the police department, and for that, Rizzo literally said to him, "You're gonna pay for your criticism." And they framed him up on a murder charge, which was corrupt from A to Z. And after years, his case is still in court, and I am sad to say, after speaking with his lawyer today, Judith Ritter, a dear friend of mine who we've brought here before, that he's lost his case, appealing the decision of Judge Clemens. He lost his case for a new trial before the Court of Common Pleas. And he's appealing that, and we're still in the legal system. But as Mumia said, he has very little confidence in the legal system. If we had confidence in it, we wouldn't be here today. there wouldn't be, as Margaret said, 2 million people in jail. 99% of them are innocent of any serious crime, while the real criminals, the genocide creators, the military-industrial complex that get paid billions for murder, are running free.
And endorsing our presidential candidate.
Yeah. I made a mistake when I said we'll free all the prisoners. There's some we won't free, and that is the super rich who benefit and profit by making war. They're going to serve some time serving the people for once in their lives. So when I began the mobilization to free Mumia, which raised at one meeting alone at Mission High when we had 2,000 people, and Lenny Weinglass was our speaker, and another meeting we had Angela Davis, and another meeting we had Geronimo Gijago and Hurricane Carter. How many of you attended any of those meetings? We raised at one meeting $100,000 because people wanted to see an innocent man, a leading innocent journalist, framed up on murder by the most corrupt police department free. To be truthful, Mumia is not optimistic about the court system's capacity to free him. The only optimism he has, which he conveyed to Judith Ritter, is the optimism in his confidence, his unwavering confidence in the people in the United States. That's why I'm here. Not because I have any illusions in a criminal justice system. Let me tell you, imagine me as a young man. I was arrested 9 times in the civil rights movement for sitting in a racist barber chair where he refused to cut the haircuts of my black schoolmates, for protesting a meeting of the racist House Un-American Activities Committee in Washington. They put me in a hammerlock and threw me out to arrest me. For speaking against the Vietnam War when our keynote speaker was Otto Nathan. How many know who he was? He was the executor of Albert Einstein's estate. When they asked Einstein to be president of Israel, he respectfully declined and supported the solidarity with the Palestinian people. And they banned him, but they refused to call him before the House Un-American Activities Committee. They called people like Paul Robeson and Pete Seeger and so on, but they didn't want to call the most, quote, intelligent man, Albert Einstein. So we have a long battle ahead. And by building these independent organizations, by the way, at the time that I founded the Mobilization to Free Mumia, I was the national secretary of the political party Socialist Action. And our method was the United Front, not a party-driven defense team, but like Assange, a team which has united every group that agrees on the fundamental principles. So the people in this room don't have to agree with me or any of the other components. They have to agree for simple things and mobilize in the streets, like a free press, like free speech, like the right to know the truth. Let me tell you, Joe mentioned Scott Ritter. He was assigned by the United Nations to investigate the charge of the United States government that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. And when I spoke to some of the leading military experts on the question, if anybody remembers who wrote who wrote the book Star Wars, exposing the Star Wars system. But he reported that the United States dropped more bombs on Iraq than any nation on earth, including Vietnam. They bombed that nation to smithereens and destroyed everything on the grounds that it had weapons of mass destruction. And now the morons who lead this country are saying, well, we made a mistake on that. We destroyed the infrastructure of Iraq, and we destroyed the infrastructure of Afghanistan, and now we have morons like Trump complaining. I don't know if you read his testimony or saw his debate. He complained that if I were president, I would solve that problem. I would immediately go to the head of the Taliban and show him a picture of his own house. Meaning, And he did show him a picture of his own house. What was that for? Trump literally said that we'll bomb your house and everyone in it if you don't do what we say regarding the terms of withdrawal from Afghanistan after 20 years of slaughter. That's what all of them do. Every leader, they go to Daniel Ortega and they say, if you dare take the Cuban route, if you dare give the land to the peasants, if you dare nationalize our industry, we will embargo you, sanction you, bomb you, and assassinate you. And they tried to assassinate Fidel Castro some 37 times. Wow. Certified by the United States CIA when we had a little moment of openness. So we're dealing with a vicious government that is, as Joe said, threatening as never before, threatening students that if you protest the wrong way, you can be expelled. Students at Harvard and Penn and Columbia, not to mention all over California. If you demonstrate beyond the time limits when they said, if you attack Zionism, that is anti-Semitism. So we live in difficult times, and our only way out, my life experience tells me, is unity, is putting aside many of our so-called differences and uniting in mass action, because the government of the United States and every other government fears the people more than anything else. And they are moving into place the most repressive apparatus we've ever seen. And the only preparation for that is a mass mobilization of the American people. Every single win for us, the right to organize unions, a right to abortion, which they took away, every right to free speech was won in the streets. No government or president ever said, okay, I'll grant you this right. It was hard fought and won, and we want to stand on those victories and expand. I'm informed, by the way, is that Judith Merkinson back there? Let's welcome Judith Merkinson, the former executive director of the National Lawyers Guild San Francisco Bay Area chapter, who is an endorser to this meeting, along with 20 other organizations that are listed. Thank you all so much for coming. Let's share some ice cream, but before you leave, help us stack up the chairs along the lines and clean up so we leave the place the way we found it. Thank you so much.